Hello, everybody. I'm Tiara from Black Girls Do Theater, and I am here with Gabby Beans, the star of Jonah at the Roundabout Theater Company. I'm super excited to be speaking with you today. How are you?
I'm so well. I'm excited to speak to you as well.
Yes. So just starting off, you've come from productions at historic theaters, Atlantic Theater Company, your Tony-nominated performance as Sabina in The Skin of Our Teeth at Lincoln Center. How does it feel to have Jonah be your Roundabout Theater Company debut production?
It feels amazing. I mean, I think the play is really, really beautiful, and I became an actor because I wanted to work on writing that excited me and felt meaningful, and I feel like that's what we're getting to do with Jonah, so I feel very blessed.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I got to see the production and I was blown away. Look, if you love thrillers, this is one to see. In Jonah, you're playing a young woman named Anna during 3 different phases of her life. With ease, I might add, actually.
Thank you.
What I did find interesting was, after reading the script, just the storyline is so thorough. So I wanted to know, what did you find most interesting about the script when you first read it?
Most interesting. I think what struck me the most was the emotional honesty of the storytelling that Rachel does in the script. This discussion of God and one's relationship with one's body figure heavily in the script, and so those themes are, I think, relevant to any human's life.
Yeah.
And I just loved how Rachel explored those themes through this lens. And I also really, really loved the theme of imagination and imagination being like medicine or being a refuge. That I very much relate to that, and so I loved seeing that explored on stage.
That's awesome. Yeah, and obviously Anna, she plays a significant role in, there's 3 male leads, and starting with her boarding school interest, Jonah, her stepbrother Danny, the writer's retreat leader Stephen. So she acts as kind of this involuntary life coach almost. When I was watching it, I felt like that's what I was seeing. And I know, like, particularly, it just seems like, in all 3 of your interactions, you were almost being persuaded to tell more about yourself maybe than you wanted to. I wanted to know that that experience of getting into that character, and how did you prepare to approach it before you even went to the stage?
So really my only strategy in prep was just reading the play over and over again, and hoping that in the repetition of reading the play, some things would sort of like sink in almost by osmosis or diffusion. Sorry, chemistry joke. Okay, but
we'll get into that.
Yeah, no. But osmosis is water, diffusion is everything else. That's why I said that. I'm a nerd. So like I and also I felt like, one of the scariest and most exciting things about this play is that I think it requires a lot of actual emotional honesty and vulnerability, and I knew that I was going to have to bring a lot of myself to it and not hide behind anything real, like actor tricks.
Yeah.
So I almost intentionally didn't develop too much behaviorally or vocally or anything like that, because I wanted to approach the work honestly, as pretentious as that sounds. But yeah, it was just about reading it and living in the world in my mind as much as I could. Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, with not much time, it seems like you just fell into it naturally. So that's awesome to hear.
Well, no, I mean it wasn't that. It required a lot of support from a lot of different people. Like Danya, our director, is incredible. Rachel, the playwright, is incredible. Our intimacy coordinator, and James, our movement coordinator, Tilly, our just a Gigi Buffington, who was our vocal coach. So a lot of people created the fertile environment for the play to kind of bloom.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know Jonah, it touches upon some taboo topics. I mean, sexual trauma, domestic violence, and I felt like it was portrayed very provocatively, but also in an empowering way. And like Anna goes through the brunt of it. She's interacting with all these different personalities. So I understand you have a neuroscience degree, so I wanted to get into that. So out of curiosity, did you do any type of like research, or did you pull from any experiences as you delved into those parts of the story?
Not specifically from, I mean, I think that my background studying neuroscience sort of pervades everything that I do, just because as someone who's interested in that stuff. I think that for prepping this piece and addressing the elements of trauma, really the main effort that I exerted was just in really understanding specifically what was relevant for Anna in each situation, because the play is Rachel's writing is incredibly specific and well observed and rich, and it's also kind of ethereal, like it's almost like gossamer. So like when you're reading it, there's so many different ways you could go with it, and there's so many different sort of allusions or evocations that come from her writing. So a lot of it was like, I think when you're dealing with trauma, you're dealing with really specific memories, and you're dealing with really emotionally vibrant instances. And so to fulfill the demands of the text and fulfill the demands of the character, a lot of it was just about getting that internal specificity for myself so that I can, feel like these emotional touch points and move through the play in the way that it needs to happen. And also, like, a lot of my research had to do with Black artists. A big reference point for Anna for me was Alice Walker. So I was watching a lot of videos of Alice Walker and just her stillness and her, she almost seems like she's like tapped in. I think she is tapped into sort of other unseen elements,
like
and
otherworldly almost.
And like just very 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 imaginative person. So that was another aspect of the research.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. No, I wanted to hear more about that degree and how it kind of played into your role. So that's really awesome to hear. One thing I did notice that even during the darker moments of the play, there were moments of humor sprinkled in, which I appreciated. I thought it was a nice break in between, the harshness of some of the parts of the storyline. When you were rehearsing with the cast members, the other cast members, were there any conversations about how to play the awkwardness up? I thought you, and particularly Anna and Jonah, had like this really interesting and endearing awkwardness in the beginning of the show that played on and later, but I really appreciated it. So what was it like backstage?
I mean, a lot of our process has been just, when you have to be really intimate with your castmates because of the demands of the story, and I think the thing that makes that happen is actually trusting each other on a personal level. So Danya, and as I mentioned, our intimacy coordinator, and James, they really worked hard to allow us to slowly build up to a level of trust where engaging in that way felt comfortable, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with someone who is a kind, sensitive, generous artist, and you feel united in your desire to tell the story with as much vibrancy as possible. So, and I think the awkwardness that you're pointing to, a lot of that is just Rachel's writing. I mean, I think she just is really in touch with what that stage of life felt like and feels like. And so, I think a lot of the relationship and a lot of the fun dynamics of those two characters interacting with each other just comes from actually like doing the writing. And just like focusing on like, how do we, the feeling that we get when we're reading, how do we make everyone else feel that when they're watching it on stage. And I will just say, like, Hagen is a really very like charming, creative, beautiful person. So, so much of the play I think is like Anna reacting and responding to these very strong impulses from the men in her life, or these three particular men in her life. And so it's the joy of this process for me to just play with my castmates and to respond presently to whatever they're bringing in, and luckily they're all really, really, really talented and really, really creative. So
yeah, no, I saw that immediately. I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. Like immediately from the first when you guys ran on stage, I was like, oh, I love this already.
Period. I love that.
And you talked about this a little bit, but being directed by Danya Tamor, were there any memorable moments during rehearsal that you had before it was staged?
You know, there's so many memorable moments. Danya is really a genius. I mean, not only in terms of her, sort of textual sensitivity, her leadership, her, visual imagination. I mean, she's got all of the ingredients that you'd want in a director. But also just, like, she has... What was most sort of stunning in terms of watching Danya work is... she really understands actors and she really respects actors, and we all felt that as much as she was telling a story through her direction, what seemed more important to her was to create kind of almost like a sandbox, so that we have this structure but we can like play and we can sort of feel alive every night and not just sort of feel like we're having to go through the motions of some sort of thing that we've set. And so it was really cool to watch her work with each of us, because she spoke to each of us differently. She had different ways of coaxing certain things out of us. And it's really singular. I've never seen a director so specifically understand the process of each actor and give them exactly what they needed, very individually. I'm trying to think, is there any really funny thing that happened? Oh, there was one funny thing that happened.
Oh, you gotta tell everybody.
Okay, so wait, I don't remember this guy. Do you remember that one guy who was running for president and then he went, Pyah! And then and then it just went wrong for him?
You have to tell me that.
I can't remember this guy. I can't remember this guy's name, but if you remember the moment, you'll remember this guy. And so for some reason that came up, and Rachel gave me the good graces to be able to do it in one of our final runs in the room. And I did that. And there's no space for that in this play, but I did it. That's the story.
That's amazing. No, I love that.
And Danya did cry with laughter.
Oh, so my gosh.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
No, I feel like anything she does, she does like a careful touch with playwrights writing, and it sounds like for Jonah specifically, she continued that, and I'm aware of her work, and I'm very honored to have seen a production staged by her, like helmed by her, so that's awesome. So like I said, I saw the show, I was really tapped in, especially with all the events that were unfolding, and there's this pivotal scene that happens. I don't want to give anything truly away, but Danny, near the end of the performance, he kind of has an unfortunate ending, and but I saw this massive like patrons around me just like get up and go formally, so, and I was like, oh, this is where it's gonna hit. It was so shocking, but without like spilling and spoiling too much, what were you thinking when that scene happened? Like from the beginning of first reading it to staging it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, that is a scene that is profoundly affecting. I think I think the tragedy of that scene, without giving anything away, is that these are two people, Danny and Anna, who deeply, deeply care for each other, and to the extent to which they are capable of doing so, care for and nurture and help each other survive. And I feel like the tragedy of that moment, beyond the visual intensity of it and sort of what he's doing calls to mind for us all, it's just the sadness of like what could be a really beautiful relationship in another timeline crumbling and devolving into a moment of harm. And so when I read it, I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is really, really sad. I remember when we first saw the particular effect that happens during that scene, being really, really disturbed. And I remember the first preview and hearing people openly scream.
Wow.
I mean, I have to say, like, there's something that's, like, pretty wild about this. Something that's pretty wild about this production is that because of the fact that Rachel does not shy away from some of the darker aspects of life. There's some an energy and a quality of listening in the theater during this show that I have never experienced as a performer, and I have never experienced as a theater goer. Yeah. There's just a sort of like a rapt silence that happens at certain points of the show that are like really incredible. Yeah. And after that scene is kind of one of those.
Yeah, no, I think hearing your just the thoughts about even audience reactions from the performer, it's so like incredible because as a theater goer, consistent theater goer, I might add, there's so many different shows and different audiences and different reactions, so that's really awesome. And I wanted to kind of play a little game. I wanted you to kind of get into the mindset of possibly being a friend of Anna. So during the course of the show,
I feel like I am a friend of Anna.
Oh, okay. So this will be completely easy. Yeah. So I feel like we see her obviously through different phases of her life, and we as the audience we're seeing her as almost like it's like a voyeuristic way. If you were a friend of Anna during each course of her life during the show, how would you describe her? Would you give her any advice?
Oh my gosh, this is such a cool question. Okay. This is so fun. Okay, so Anna, during boarding school times in Jonah, how would I describe her and what advice would I give her? I would describe her as a bubbly, free, pure kind of like a daffodil. That's how I see her. And the advice I would give her is to enjoy the space in which you feel good, and enjoy being a girl, because girlhood is a big theme of the show. Now, during the Danny times, I would describe her as a resilient, a hardworking, a kind of edgy person. And the advice I would give her is to just keep going. Yeah. And Anna, when she arrives at the writer's retreat, I would describe her as deep, enigmatic, disciplined, and creative. And the advice I would give her is the tools that allowed you to survive are not necessarily the tools that will allow you to thrive.
That is really deep. No, but I think those three phases and those three responses align so perfectly. So I'm really happy that this little game worked out.
Oh yeah, no, it's helpful.
Also, my last question is, Jonah actually personally transformed the way I looked at plays. I read plays for fun. I went to school for film and I studied theater, but from a theater artist to a theater goer, what do you want people to think about when they exit the theater after seeing this show?
Oh my gosh, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I think on a more maybe like personal level, I really resonate with the message of the show that healing is possible, and that the things that we go through in our life that could feel harmful or that are harmful can also be gateways, with the correct support, can be gateways to a more expansive, resilient version of ourselves. So I hope that audiences receive that message. From a more theatrical, theater craft perspective, I mean, one of the things I really enjoyed about this piece and got excited by when it was offered to me was that, Rachel and Danya are not afraid of nuance, and they're not afraid of creating a piece where an audience needs to lean in. So I hope that the slow burn of this piece and the slow reveal of this piece encourages theater goers to enjoy work that maybe doesn't spoon feed a message, maybe doesn't spoon feed narrative plot points, but also hopefully, if we've done our job right, which I hope we have, like offers a more complete experience, because this piece asks you to meet it. It doesn't necessarily meet you, and I think there's something like valuable about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I completely love this show. Again, like I love plays like this that are thrilling and super engaging for the audience, and it's a story that a lot of people can relate to no matter where they're from. And so thank you so much for, you know, going on stage performing as this character, this powerful character. And that's all from me.
I'm Tiara from Black Girls Do Theater.
I'm Gabby Beans. I play Anna in Jonah at the Laura Pels Theater with Roundabout Theater Company now through March 10th.
And this has been Black Girls Do Theater on record.